Elections in major markets raise questions for European investors. Welcome to Market Insight, I'm Thomas Warner. France's left-wing alliance became the largest group in a hung parliament over the weekend, just days after a landslide win for Britain's Labour Party. Britain's new PM and his ministers have been out and about ever since Thursday, laying out their plans for the next 5 years. But the situation in France looks far more complicated. With me to help make sense of it all is Russ Mould. He is the investment director at AJ Bell, and a very warm welcome to you, Russ. Very good of you to give up your time to come and talk to us today. Now, turning to France, we've potentially got weeks of parliamentary horse trading to come, and so far there does seem to be little sign of any concern at all in the equity markets. Is it the calm before the storm, do you think, Russ?
It's a good question. I think equity markets were braced for a very difficult result, and they certainly got that last weekend. And I think the summary for the results of the second round is not ideal, could have been worse. Worse news probably already priced in. So I think that's why the equity market is taking it quite calmly. The euro is currently holding firm, and although the cost of French government borrowing is above average relative to the German government cost of borrowing, it's within historic limits and actually not moving up too sharply today. So again, currency, bond, stock markets, all relatively calm. I think in the view, again, the result could have been worse, but much work still to be done. We have a very difficult negotiation for a coalition to come up. France's debts are way above the levels that are acceptable to the Maastricht Treaty, and the new government itself has got some very aggressive spending, or the biggest party's got aggressive spending plans of its own. So much work still to be done.
Let's look at the UK now. The new Finance Minister, Rachel Reeves, was laying out plans this morning to kickstart home building. Once again, though, Russ, the stock markets didn't really react. Why was that, do you think?
And the home builders have actually had a very good run in the weeks leading up to the election, again in the view that Labour would win and win handily, which they did, and that some supply side reforms involving planning and housing and renewables and infrastructure would be big forefronts of any Labour economic plan. So again, largely expected there. So the builders, having already had a good run, saying, well, fine, we kind of know all this. I think Rachel Reeves, the new finance minister, is now saying we're going to carry out a thorough Treasury spending review. We're going to get the Office for Budget Responsibility to prepare some new economic growth forecasts, and we will prioritise growth when we come to the autumn budget. So I think now all eyes will move on to that financial statement when it comes.
You've obviously been speaking to people all morning about this, particularly this address from Rachel Reeves. What sort of reaction have you been getting from people out there?
Again, it's a very similar reaction to the French situation. I guess there's probably more comfort in that Labour does have a thumping majority and will be easily able to pass any legislation it chooses to. And also the lessons of Trussonomics and the accident that befell the British economy under the Conservative government in 2022 is being seen by financial market participants as a warning sign that Labour won't do anything too aggressive on tax and spending, at least certainly at least initially. Equally, markets do seem quite pleased with the Labour Party's focus on growth, because that's what's really needed to help the UK shake off its debts is growth. And there isn't an awful lot of fiscal room for manoeuvre simply because debt to GDP is so high. So there's a feeling that their policies seem sensible and prudent. And as long as if there is extra borrowing, it's for productive investment rather than just welfare payments, markets for the moment at least will be relatively calm.
Well, there has been one stock that has been lighting up the FTSE today, Russ. That's Britvic. It's agreed to a takeover from Carlsberg at the third time of asking. Who's got the better end of that deal, do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. Normally you see one share price go up and one share price go down when a big deal is done on the grounds that somebody's getting a good price and somebody's getting a bad one. Both shares are up today. Britvic to near the bid price level to suggest that investors now feel confident it will go through. I think Carlsberg investors were initially quite nervous, but now that PepsiCo was given its blessing for the deal, because Britvic is a big bottling agent for them, I think that has eased one major obstacle, and they haven't raised their bid price too much from their initial offers. So maybe both sides will win, and Carlsberg looking to diversify and maybe appeal to a younger generation who don't drink quite as much beer and drink softer drinks instead.
Well, there's one country in Europe where they will never give up their love of beer. I think that's Germany, and we've had a big story over there today. It's the online takeaway firm Delivery Hero, Russ, down heavily after revealing that it might be facing a €400 million fine for antitrust violations. What is your understanding of what they're in trouble for, and how material of a fine do you think that might be for them?
Yeah, I mean, management have already put away a provision of €189 million because this investigation by the European Commission has been running since 2022 when their offices were raided. The company is being accused of anti-competitive practice. information sharing, for example, with rivals, which may, I guess, ultimately decide who addresses which markets, how much they charge, I guess the potential implications of that. The fine of more than 400 million euros, which management is now expecting, well, ironically, Delivery Hero is expected to get into profit for the first time this year at the operating level, and that's at around 200 million euro level, so more than double their maiden ever profit. It's not an insignificant sum, it's quite a big hit, and that's why the shares are down to almost fresh multi-year lows today as a result on the Frankfurt Exchange.
Just finally, Russ, I'm going to ask you about Ardo. They've signed a deal, have announced it today. They're going to be building a third robotic warehouse over in Japan. They obviously dropped out of the FTSE 100 a couple of weeks ago. Shares are down by half since January. What do you make of Tim Steiner's efforts to turn things around over there?
The shares recently hit a 7-year low, and so the issue of whether Ocado is on the right track and how much Mr. Steiner is paid are always going to be bubbling around there. But at least this is some good news for the company with this third warehousing facility in Japan after a North American partner, Sobeys of Canada, declined to add to, I think, a fifth facility at its rollout and made sure that their deal was no longer exclusive, so Ocado could perhaps look for other partners in the USA and Canada. So the model for Ocado, it's still losing money in food delivery with a joint venture with Marks and Spencer here in the UK. It's trying to turn itself into this technology software company, and the investors are being very, very patient and waiting for that to turn into a profit. The more partners they have, the more warehouses roll out, the better, but it's still yet to prove itself, and that's why the shares have been finding it pretty tough going this year.
Investment Director at AJ Bell Russ Mould, many thanks indeed for your thoughts today. And that is Market Insight. Don't forget you can watch more videos at Reuters.com.